All right, we're rolling.
If everybody could just take a seat, any seat. We have two screens here. They will not have different information, so you don't have to worry about which side of the room you're sitting on. And I'd like to welcome everybody. I'm Pat McLaughlin with MIG. We're the consulting team working with the city and the planning team on the plan for this corridor. And it's really great to get a turnout. Just before I introduce the councilman and the planning director, I'd like to get a sense of who's in the room. So if you're a resident of Temecula, could you raise your hand? Okay, we've got a lot of locals. Residents of other communities that are adjacent or near Temecula? Okay, which communities? Murrieta? You work in Murrieta, okay. And, yeah, so you'll be interested in the 395 corridor plan as well, which is connected to this. How about businesses in Temecula? Tourism businesses specifically, like hotels, shops in the area that cater to tourists? And how about other businesses in Temecula? Okay. Any other representatives like agencies or other agencies? Okay, good. So we've got a great split. We've got some businesses and people who have dual citizenship. They're businesses and residents of Temecula. So I'd like to quickly turn it over to Councilmember Jeff Conchero, who's going to welcome all of you, and then Patrick Richardson is going to go over kind of some basics of the project and some frequently asked questions. So, Councilman.
Thank you, Pat. Well, first of all, on behalf of the city, welcome. It's great to see this kickoff with a virtual full house. So I appreciate your being here, and we'll see how this process unfolds. If it follows the same type of process that we saw on the Old Town Specific Plan revisit that we recently came through, very much the same team that did that will be working with us here. It's very interactive. We, being the city, are not coming in here with any preconceived notions about what will be the end result of this. That's up to all of you. I know that I don't want to get into the consultant's thunder, but prior to this meeting, they chose a bunch of stakeholders, I think about a dozen, and interviewed them, and I was the last one to go. And I think I surprised some people, but I had a different vision than they'd heard before. And that's just mine. It's not necessarily the city, it's just mine. And so that's the point. Everybody will bring something different. It's okay if your feeling is things are great the way it is, and maybe we just want to tweak it a little bit and have Jefferson Corridor go into the next decade or two or three not being all that different. If you're like me, my idea is this is a rare opportunity. Let's pretend there's nothing there. Let's pretend it's a blank canvas. What do we want it to be 30, 40, 50 years from now? And that's part of the process too. I don't want anybody to think if you've got property on Jefferson Avenue or a business on Jefferson Avenue that we're going to go in and blow it up. And that's certainly not what I'm saying. But this is a chance not so much to say, what are these, within these limits, what can we do? This is an opportunity to say, if we were free to think any way we wanted to think, and we really had an idea that was knock your socks off from here for Jefferson, what would it look like? And then after all that's done, the next step after that will be an implementation plan, and how do we get there? So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of interaction, roll up your sleeves, get a little dirty with it, and really feel free to let us know your ideas. The consultants eventually will be putting all the ideas together. This is a process that will take some time, several workshops, but after it all unfolds, there'll be something we can all look at. The most important thing, and I can't emphasize it enough, is the city's driving this process, but only to start and kick it off. You're driving this process. This is very much meant to be and needs to be a citizen-driven effort. So don't ever forget that. You're in charge here. So, and I won't forget that either. Okay? So have a good time. Let's do some good work. And with that, Patrick, you up? Patrick Richardson, our Director of Development.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate everyone turning out tonight, and such a good turnout for our first meeting. I know some of your faces, some of you are new. I'm the city's planning and redevelopment director. My job here is to oversee planning, building, and redevelopment departments of the city. Basically, all new development, people doing additions to their property, housing projects, and the like. So this, as Jeff commented, we've done a similar process, what we're starting tonight with the Old Town specific plan. And just a brief history of that. In 1994, the city adopted the first Old Town specific plan, and it was very successful in terms of the city invested quite a bit of money into Old Town to improve the infrastructure, both in Old Town and allowing people to get in and out of Old Town. In 2008, we embarked on a new update to the plan, and we did the same kind of visioning process with the community. It took us about 2 years. There were at least 20 meetings that were held, starting out with 5 or 6 visioning workshops, and then what ultimately the process culminated with the adoption of a new Old Town specific plan. And you can see some of the things that have been built in Old Town in the last few years. There's been a real renaissance in our downtown that we like to refer to it as. And we see the Jefferson corridor, which really is one of the first commercial areas of the city. We see that as the next area that we want to focus on because it's a natural extension of the Old Town area. What I wanted to do, and a lot of times when we have these meetings, I think when you get notices from the government, people are fearful about what we're talking about doing, and I wanted to kind of run through some different questions and basically what we're planning to do and what we're not planning to do, and hopefully that'll put some of your minds at ease, and if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer that. The first one, and these were ones that we came up with, and you may have others once I get through this list, but will the city force me to change the existing development or buildings on my property? And the answer to that is no. What we did, or what we're looking to do, is very similar to what we did with the Old Town processes. We were looking at adding things to the already successful components of the district. So many of the businesses in the Jefferson corridor are very, very successful. And so what we're looking to do is to provide incentives through zoning, also provide infrastructure that will allow for property owners to more fully utilize or intensify the use of their property with the ultimate adoption of a specific plan. If a property owner has no desire, they're happy with what they have, then that's fine. Again, we see the Jefferson corridor as a vital component to our business community, and we hope to see that it returns back to some of its earlier glory when it was the original commercial area of the city. One of the things that always tends to scare people is the term redevelopment. The Jefferson Avenue study area is located in a redevelopment project area. The next question when you hear about redevelopment is, will the city take my property using eminent domain? We do have a redevelopment agency. We, however, as a redevelopment agency, do not have eminent domain authority. Now, that doesn't mean the city does maintain the ability to use eminent domain, but that's only for public projects, such as right-of-way, infrastructure, bridges. We're working right now on an extension of the Overland through the Jefferson corridor area that eventually will cross over to Diaz. And there has been some acquisition of property. The city has the ability, generally what happens is we try to negotiate purchases of property for public infrastructure. It's very, very rare that it ever gets to a point of eminent domain. And generally, a lot of times it's what they call a friendly condemnation because there are tax benefits to the property owner to go through that. But this effort, again, the city for private development through the redevelopment agency does not have eminent domain authority. Will the city force existing businesses that do not meet new zoning under this specific plan out of the area? No. One of the, like I said earlier, one of the guiding principles that we're going to try to adhere to is we want this to be an additive process. We don't want to create legal non-conforming uses. We want businesses that are here in the corridor to continue to thrive and potentially grow, but also add additional uses that aren't currently allowed in the project area. One would be mixed-use development. As many of you know, there are no residential units in the project area. And probably just before we just give you a little explanation, this is basically the boundaries of the project area. It's Marietta Creek on the west, Interstate 15 on the east, the boundary of the city of Marietta on the north, and basically Rancho California Road on the south. There virtually are no residential uses in the corridor. We would like to see the possibility or explore the possibility of introducing residential uses in the area through mixed-use development, much as like what has been done here in Old Town. We feel that one of the reasons why Old Town is becoming more successful is that there are people that live here, not just work here. I've been with the city for 5 years, and just in the last 5 years, I remember when, at the end of the day, driving through Old Town about 5 or 6, there just was nothing going on down here. Now there are people that live down here, businesses are thriving, and it's really a 24-hour downtown. And we hope to see that might be the possibility for the Jefferson corridor as well. Will the city develop a secret future vision and plan for the area behind closed doors without the community's input? No, we will not. This is a very transparent process. We have no preconceived ideas about where this process will lead us. We do have models or examples of areas that, one in our own city, Old Town being an example. There are other cities in Southern California and throughout the United States that have gone through similar efforts. So we have visions and ideas, but the purpose of this visioning process is to get the ideas and feedback from the community, because that will become ultimately the community's plan once it's adopted by the city council. The new visioning plan includes the potential for new residential development. How will housing be compatible with the existing mix of uses in the area? I think I can just point to Old Town as an example. Some of the commercial along the Jefferson corridor, you could, as those areas revitalize, you could include residential units over commercial property or commercial development. How many of these, and they can be compatible. We have several projects that have been built in Old Town that work very well with the residential units above commercial on the ground floor. Will all the new housing developments have affordable units, and will all the new housing be affordable? We, as a redevelopment agency, we are required to provide affordable housing, but as an example, in Old Town, under the plan, we project about 1,500 new dwelling units in Old Town at build out, and of those, 5% will be affordable. And what I mean by affordable, I mean it's primarily anywhere from low to moderate income. And we're talking folks in the community that the median income in the city is about $70,000 a year. So you're looking at families of 4 that maybe make $45,000 up to $60,000 a year that would be considered affordable. But the vast majority of the units will be market rate. And what will the prices be? Obviously, that's something that the city doesn't control. That would be controlled by the market. Hopefully, the prices will come back from what they are now, and it will be a good investment in Jefferson corridor. It says, I'm planning to expand or add to my business and my building. Will I be able to do so under this new plan, or will I become a non-conforming use or structure? Again, we want to minimize any non-conforming uses or structures as part of this planning effort. If you're planning to expand, we encourage you to do that, even through this planning process. Nothing is being placed on hold. The existing zoning that's in place in the Jefferson corridor area is in place, and people can come in and do expansions or add new things to their businesses. We want to encourage that. And basically the reason for that is more investment that occurs in the corridor will make the corridor more successful. And I think that's pretty much it. Are there any questions that you might have before we get on to the next part of the presentation? Okay. I'll turn it over to Pat.
Okay. Great, thanks, Patrick. As you can probably tell already, this is a very hands-on, very friendly staff to work with, and actually, Katie Ennis is going to be doing the presentation, but also Dale West in the back, he's the other man with the microphone, so when you have questions or comments, he'll be assisting me in going around and getting your comments. What I'd like to do now is just to go over very quickly the agenda for the rest of the meeting. And you've got it, I think many of you, most of you have picked up agendas at the front table. If you didn't, if you can hold up your hand if you'd like an agenda, Andy Pendoli can give you one. And also just some really quick housekeeping. We've got a comment card that's in a light gray blue that is on heavy stock. We'd like to encourage you through the evening to fill out that comment card and hand it to the staff or put it on the table when you leave, because we really need that comment card. And periodically I'll be inviting you to fill out the comment card. Also, the councilman is not guarding it, but if you'd like refreshments over there, we have some cookies and some water, and he will provide concierge service to you should you desire any cookies and water specifically provided to you by the councilman. So we're going to, the first thing we're going to do is that Katie Ennis, who's the lead planner on the project, is going to be going over the purpose, background, and existing conditions, just to give you a little more insight into the things that you've been able to see in the maps around the room. And we'll be taking some questions of clarification and things like that in the middle of the presentation and also after it. And then the bulk of the evening, we're going to be turning it over to you. We're going to be wanting to know what your long-term vision is for the corridor, what you'd like to see. There's no constraints at all, no rules at this point, what you'd really like to see in the corridor. And then we'd also like to get your ideas on challenges and opportunities you see in the Jefferson corridor, because as Patrick mentioned, the Old Town has had a plan developed for it, but now we're moving into this corridor and eventually linking up with the overall, all of the 395 corridor, which goes actually up to Lake Elsinore. And then we'll be closing with a summary of the next steps, and also would like your ideas on how to reach out, how to communicate with you, your neighbors, your fellow businesses, but also with the broader Temecula community, because as Patrick said, we want this to be a totally transparent process. And so we will be having a website up soon that will be communicating, and it'll actually talk to you. It'll let you know meetings if you sign up, and be sure to make sure that your email is on the sign-up sheet, because we'll be sending you an email out about the website, but also a link will be posted on the city's website. And also a technique we'll be using throughout the evening is that Andy Pendoli, and Andy, where are you? Did you disappear? There he is. Andy's multitasking here. Andy Pendoli, who's our project manager on the outreach, will be doing what we call graphic recording here, recording your comments real time, and we'll be recapping there. And also Rick Barrett, who's our director of design back there, he's also our sign-in and name tag chief, will be also, if they lend themselves, sketching some of your ideas up here on the wall graphics. So we'll have a real interactive, fun evening. So are there any questions on the agenda or the rest of the evening before we move on to Katie? Okay, well, turn it over to Katie, who's going to do an overview.
Thank you, Pat. Can everybody hear me? My name is Katie Inez, and I'm a planner here at the City of Temecula, and it's my pleasure to be here with all of you this evening. On behalf of our planning team, I want to welcome all of you to our first Jefferson Avenue Study Area Visioning Workshop. We've been preparing, and we're really excited to have such a great turnout tonight. So as we look toward the future, I want to encourage all of you to think big and imagine Jefferson's future potential. As businessman John Scully, former president of Pepsi, once said, The future belongs to those who see the possibilities before they become obvious. So tonight, let's imagine the possibilities for the Jefferson Avenue study area. So with that, before I jump into my presentation, just to give you a quick overview, my presentation consists of 3 sections. The first will be a review of the historical context of the area. Second will be the project purpose, and hopefully section 2 will help you to understand why are we going through this visioning process and what is its purpose. And lastly, section 3, I will provide a discussion of the existing conditions and an overview of the study area. So jumping right in to the historical context. How has the past shaped the present? Well, some of you may or may not know that Jefferson Avenue corridor was once a part of Old Highway 395. And this was the primary vehicular thoroughfare through the project area prior to the construction of Interstate 15 in the early 1980s. So after the construction of Interstate 15, development began to pick up along Jefferson Avenue, creating what eventually became Temecula's first true commercial core. Some noteworthy development that occurred during this time was the Winchester Square shopping center, built in 1981, and many of you probably refer to this shopping center today as the old Stater Brothers Center. Many of you, if you've been in the area long enough, probably recall shopping here and coming here to do a lot of your kind of goods and services before there really wasn't a whole lot of other development within the area. Secondly, the old Adobe Plaza was constructed in 1987, and this shopping center actually contains the study area's only existing historic site within the study area, the Gonzalez Adobe, which you can see here in the aerial. And the Gonzalez Adobe was built in 1879, and it's the oldest adobe home still standing in southwest Riverside County. So here you can see a historical aerial map of the study area in 1989. And as you may notice, many of the buildings were actually existing within the study area during this time. 1989 was a landmark year for the city of Temecula. 1989 was actually when the city incorporated. And upon incorporation, the city carried over Riverside County's existing zoning ordinance and development standards. And these standards were used as development continued to occur within the area even after incorporation. So over the years, the Jefferson Avenue study area has continued to develop under the old county standards into a mix of light industrial, office, and strip commercial into what it is today. So essentially, we've had zoning and development standards in place in this area, and they really have not changed all that much over the past 20 years. So tonight, as we look forward, Jefferson is at a crossroad in its evolution. Over the past 20 years, a lot of the city's growth and development has really been focused elsewhere within the city. And this has caused the Jefferson Avenue study area to be overshadowed by other development, such as the Promenade Mall expansion and recent revitalization efforts that have been occurring in Old Town. However, we're hoping that through this visioning process, that the Jefferson Avenue study area can have the potential to have a new beginning. And we're really excited to have all of you here to shape its future. The outcome of the visioning process really gives us the potential to reestablish this area within the community and to establish it as a place with a recognizable identity where people will want to visit, where they'll want to shop, where they may potentially even want to live, work, and play. So why is this area's revitalization important now? As many of you have probably noticed, just in visiting the study area, a lot of the development is aging. Some of the parcels have become underutilized. And as I previously had mentioned, a lot of the development has been occurring under relatively outdated development standards. Also, the revitalization effort is giving us the opportunity to get ahead of the next economic cycle. With kind of a lull in the development activity right now, this visioning process will allow us to look forward, plan where we want to go, and really gear up for the next wave of development that we hope is coming. Additionally, there are a number of planned infrastructure projects within the study area that are going to be directly impacting the study area's character, its access, and I'll get into kind of the specifics on the infrastructure projects a little bit later on in the presentation. Also, Jefferson really has an importance as far as the regional synergy. Just its location and proximity to Old Town, its close proximity to the mall, really its revitalization is key in providing for kind of regional activity that we know is going to occur in the future. So as we think about this area's future tonight, I thought it would be important for all of you to keep the definition of vision in mind. And vision is defined as the act or power of imagining that which may be to come, or intelligent foresight. And so as we go through this visioning exercise tonight with MIG and our planning team, I want all of you to begin to ask yourself, how do you imagine this area's look and feel, its character, and its identity over the next 15 to 30 years? So you may be asking yourself, what is visioning and how is it used as a planning tool? Well, visioning is a participatory process that brings stakeholders together, kind of like how we all are tonight, to develop a shared vision for the future of an area within the city. Typically, visioning is done at the very beginning of any planning process, and here we stand tonight at the very beginning of this planning process. And so once we all collectively come together to establish the vision, we can then understand where are we going and what steps do we need to take to kind of bring the vision to fruition. So essentially, this visioning process is going to be used as a decision-making tool for us to move forward with future action. So what is the purpose of the visioning process, and what is going to be the outcome once we're completed with, going through this process? And this is a flow chart that I thought would probably help you to kind of understand the visioning process. Essentially tonight we're asking two important questions. Where are we now, and where do we want to be in the future? And the answer to these two questions will essentially allow us to establish the future vision for the area. And then once we have this vision, we'll go ahead and formulate an implementation strategy and framework, which will set the foundation for the future Jefferson Avenue specific plan. So what exactly is a specific plan? Because I know planners use a lot of jargon, toss some terms around. Well, a specific plan is a written planning document. It's essentially a zoning document that is used by a variety of different people, property owners, business owners, city staff, other decision makers, and it's essentially the guide or blueprint for all future development. The specific plan is used as a tool to implement the vision that we hope to develop with all of you over this visioning process. So just to help you further understand the concept of a specific plan, this is an image of the Old Town zoning district. And as you can see, we have the overall Old Town specific plan area, and it has been broken down into a number of different districts. And each established district encourages different land use types, different development types, and each district really does have its own unique character. And I want all of you to think about the concept of districts and how this concept could potentially be applied to the Jefferson Avenue study area, where this large planning area is not going to be treated as being all the same. Really, the districts allow us to kind of tailor different types of development and land use throughout the planning area. So what are the benefits of a specific plan? In this case, the specific plan is intended to allow, to expand upon the allowable land uses in the area. We also hope that it will create incentives that will encourage the revitalization of future opportunity within the area. It will also include an infrastructure and financing plan. Also in parallel with the specific plan process, we plan on doing a program environmental impact report, which will essentially analyze the environmental impacts of the study area at build out. And this will be beneficial because as properties begin to revitalize in the future, if they're found to be consistent with this previously analyzed environmental impact report. Basically, the entitlement process and getting them to construction is streamlined. Also, the specific plan will identify goals, objectives, and policies that are study-specific and tailored to this specific area to achieve the future community-based vision. So as far as the overall visioning process, obviously here we are tonight at the first visioning workshop, which is really examining the existing conditions, your vision, the opportunities that you may see in the study area and the challenges. But in addition to this workshop, we also have 4 other workshops planned, probably over the next 9 months or so. And in addition to these visioning workshops, we also will be holding various public meetings, asking you to engage with us as we actually draft the specific plan document. So just jumping back into the visioning process that we're dealing with tonight, the second workshop, which we hope to be held in winter 2012, will explore concepts of urban design and placemaking. Workshop number 3 will be complete streets, land use, transportation, and parking. Workshop number 4 will discuss alternative development scenarios, market feasibility, and economic development strategies. And then finally, as we move into the final vision, hopefully in summer 2012, we'll kind of do a recap on the vision and finalize the stakeholder vision that we've identified. So with that, that is the conclusion of sections 1 and 2 of the presentation. But before I move on to the project overview and the existing conditions, I just wanted to check in with all of you to see if you had any questions about the visioning process, about the project purpose, or the specific plan.
So, any questions about where we're going over the next 9 or 10 months? Yes, okay.
After the planning process is finished, how long will the specific plan take to prepare?
The specific plan, with staff preparing that in-house, will probably take anywhere from 12 to 18 months.
Okay, other
Any
questions?
others?
Where we're going in the future?
No? Okay. And I'll go ahead and jump into answering the question of where are we now? As Patrick had described, and I'm sure as all of you now know, this is the project study area located immediately north of Old Town, north of Rancho California Road, west of Interstate 15, north of Cherry Street and the City of Marietta border, and immediately east of Diaz Road and Marietta Creek. And the stretch of Jefferson Avenue from Rancho California Road up to Cherry Street is about 2.3 miles long. So as far as the size of the study area, we're looking at approximately 560 net acres total. And just to kind of put this relatively large number into perspective, it's about 4.5 times the size of the Old Town specific plan area. However, it is important to kind of keep in mind that although the study area seems relatively large, over 40% of the area is currently designated as open space and is intended to remain as permanent open space in the future. So if you take this acreage out of the equation, you're left with about 317 acres of commercially zoned property that could potentially be revitalized in the future. So as far as building square footage that's on the ground to date, staff has calculated about 3.8 million square feet of building area that's currently existing within the study area, which seems like a pretty large number. But just to put this into perspective, this is about 3 times the amount of the building area compared to the Promenade Mall. And as Patrick had mentioned, we have no park or recreation facilities within the study area, no residential development, and no mixed-use development that currently exists in the project site to date. However, when the city did our 2005 general plan update, This document did identify a mixed-use overlay, which you can see here right along Jefferson Avenue. And this mixed-use overlay is about 73 acres and is an area that could potentially accommodate mixed-use development in the future. In addition to that, our general plan housing element identified an urban density overlay, which follows the same boundaries as a mixed-use overlay. And this urban density overlay anticipates 30 dwelling units per acre by right within this area. However, even though these overlay areas have been identified by the city's general plan, our current zoning within the study area does not allow for residential development or mixed-use development. So as far as a mix of businesses within the study area, staff has been very busy over the past year or so conducting field surveys. We actually drove around the study area, took pictures. You may have seen me out there with my camera, and we categorized the businesses within the study area, and 14 different use categories were identified. The first being automobile-oriented businesses, educational institutions, government facilities, general retail, hotels and lodging facilities, industrial, office, open space, parking lots, religious facilities, restaurants, which include both drive-through and sit-down restaurant establishments, service commercial businesses, vacant buildings, and parcels that are undeveloped. So as you can see, we have a very eclectic mix of businesses and land uses within the study area. Also, we started to try to understand the age of the buildings and to understand when the buildings were constructed within the study area. The age of the buildings vary greatly. We have some buildings that were constructed prior to the city's incorporation, others that were post-incorporation, kind of around the late 1980s, early 90s, and then more in the recent past. And I mention this because some of the older aging buildings may present the opportunity for revitalization in the future. So this is a map of the existing street pattern. And as you can see, the study area has relatively limited east-west vehicular access and connection. And as we started kind of looking at this area, we use the analogy that the study area is kind of like an island, where if you want to go to Hawaii, there are two ways that you would be able to get there, either by plane or by boat. And this is relatively similar to the access within the Jefferson Avenue study area. You have two options, either Rancho California Road or Winchester. Also want to mention that the study area does have relatively limited sidewalk facilities. If you have ever tried to walk in the study area, you may be walking along and all of a sudden the sidewalk just ends. A lot of development does not have any sidewalks at all, and it also has relatively limited bike accessibility. So jumping into the future infrastructure projects that I want all of you to consider as we move forward with the visioning process. We do have two future roadway connections that will provide additional east-west vehicular access within the study area. First being the Overland Drive Bridge, which many of you maybe have read about in the newspaper, kind of have some familiarity with this project. And the second is the Rancho Way extension, which will connect basically down here from Rancho Way across Marietta Creek over to Inez. And then the Overland Bridge extension, that will actually connect from where the T intersection is right now across Marietta Creek to Diaz Roads, hopefully opening up some of the access from the study area. Additionally, an important infrastructure project is the French Valley Interchange. This project will be constructed in two phases. Phase 1 includes the construction of a new southbound off-ramp, which is located here. And just to orient you, this is Cherry Street. This is kind of the northern portion of the study area. And this is Jefferson Avenue. And this thick black line here is the boundary, City of Marietta being on the north side of that black line, and Temecula down here on the south side. So in addition to this off-ramp, there will also be improvements along Cherry Street, and also additional improvements to widen the bridge right here at the existing Winchester interchange. And the construction of phase 1 is anticipated to start in early 2012. So in regard to phase two of the French Valley interchange, phase 2 will connect Jefferson Avenue to Cherry Street here. It includes a bridge connection across Interstate 15 and will provide additional access. Here's French Valley interchange over to Inez. We also anticipate the construction of the Marietta Creek Restoration Project and trail within the study area. As many of you have probably noticed, there is an existing trail that is located along Diaz Road. We are anticipating the construction of another trail right here along the west side of Marietta Creek. And this trail is going to be important because it does present the opportunity for additional pedestrian and bicycle connectivity from Old Town up through the Jefferson Avenue study area up into the city of Marietta. And then if you want to go east on the trail, it actually will provide a future connection from the Jefferson Avenue study area to the Promenade Mall. And so in addition to these infrastructure projects, there are a couple of future alternative transportation projects that I just wanted to make all of you aware of. The future Cherry Street Transit Center is slated to be located somewhere up in the northern portion of the study area. The exact location is to be determined. The city, we're currently working with the Riverside Transit Agency to kind of pin down the exact location of the transit center. And so just something to be aware of. In addition to that, another important future transportation project is the future high-speed rail project. The high-speed rail station right now is currently slated to be located somewhere in the city of Marietta, either along the 215 corridor or the 15, and the exact location of that is still currently trying to be determined. But I mention this because this project has the potential to provide regional connectivity by essentially linking Old Town, the Jefferson Avenue study area, the Cherry Street Transit Center, and the Promenade Mall to the surrounding region. And we also have the opportunity tonight to look at different zoning options that may potentially promote the feasibility of these future transit projects. Before I move on, I also just wanted to mention we have a parallel planning study happening, which involves 4 cities. The city of Temecula, Marietta, Wildomar, and Lake Elsinore, and it is a study of the Jefferson corridor, as we call it, which is a 16-mile stretch of Jefferson Avenue, and it does change names as it goes up through the other jurisdictions. And this planning study, you probably will hear about it, is also going to be doing a visioning process, and it is going to be promoting regional transportation, linking the 4 cities, looking at it really as a region, and coordinating transit opportunities with land use planning. So with that, that concludes my overview of the project study area and existing conditions. And now we are really ready to hear from you, interact from you, and get your feedback. So thank you.
Anybody have any questions of Katie before we move on, though, about what's proposed to happen here, what can happen here in the process? Yes?
Will your PowerPoints be on the website?
Yes, they will.
Yeah, actually, the product of tonight will be on the website as well. So we're looking for all of you to help fill up this paper here. And give Andy a real challenge and Rick a real challenge in terms of Rick has the challenge. It's almost like Pictionary, but very sophisticated. We're going to ask Rick to sketch out some of the ideas that you have, because we want you to really feel free to think big at this point. We don't have any constraints. We don't have any financial constraints. All that'll come later when we're narrowing things down and working with you to narrow things down. But we'd like you to think about, are there things that you might like, ideas that you might like to carry in from other areas that you've been here, where you're all very familiar with Jefferson Corridor, you're very familiar with the area. We know that you want to support and revitalize your businesses there. We want to be able to bring people in who can really add to the area, who can shop here, recreate here, also be an asset to other things in the area. So what would you like to see in Jefferson Corridor?
I was just
Leticia.
yes, I was just up in Canada and had the opportunity to go to a very charming little town, and the whole town was just an art mecca. So all that they had was a one-street town with galleries, gallery after gallery after gallery of mixed art. So the gamut from very inexpensive to horrifically expensive. And what was interesting about it is that the town was packed. You had to drive an hour and a half to get there. There's absolutely nothing around it. So it was interesting, but anywhere around here, there's no place like that. If you are looking for art, there is no place where you can go one central place and have such a wide variety. So not only did they have the art galleries, but they had restaurants for all of us that were shopping for our art, and of course other businesses. As far as the creek, we have a very lovely creek. We have the bike trail that you're talking about, and maybe it would be nice to have housing overlooking the creek.
Interesting. So,
To clean it up a little bit.
so basically housing that has a view of the creek.
Exactly, exactly. So my thoughts.
Anything else though? You say you had one other.
No, that's pretty well it, but it creates another destination point. We have wine country people come for that. We have people come to Pachenga. We have people who come to Old Town to go antiquing and rod runs and all the different things. Well, why not have another area where they come in for beautiful art in all price ranges?
And you can attract some of those people who are in wine country. They can come
That's true.
here and
Right.
shop
Right.
in the arts district. And,
Right.
and also not just eat in wine country, but eat
Right.
in the arts district.
Right.
Okay, other ideas, other thoughts, yes. Ken?
How about a sports arena with a convention center? And with the mixed use retail, like, in Orange County, Southwest Metro area, they're doing a lot of that, building hotels with, residential and retail also. But I think we're missing out on the big picture and bring more people in. With us, the place is great on the weekend. We got a lot of stuff to do on the weekend, tons of stuff. Midweek, I'd like to get some jobs for the people that live here, get big corporate buildings in over there, and that's supportive of convention space and bringing more people into the area during the weeks when we're all working for business,
So the rest,
especially in this quarter.
are there any specific areas where you might see that?
There's a big empty land.
A big empty land, right. I see that. Andy, there's a big empty space of land here. Where
Right
I
next to
have,
where your high-speed rail's gonna come in and all that. That's a good one.
so you can bring people in, high-speed rail, get people from Sacramento, the Sacramento Kings could come down
Well, I
here.
don't know about that.
Okay, yes.
I had a question. As a longtime resident here in Temecula, there was some talk at one time that Date Street was going to go to the freeway. Has that been abandoned and Cherry is the alternative?
Katie, do you?
I'm gonna ask Greg Butler to answer that question.
My name's Greg Butler. I'm the Director of Public Works. The French Valley Parkway interchange, it's referred to as Date Street on the easterly side, Cherry Street on the westerly side. Ultimately, it's going to be named French Valley Parkway. And so if you're traveling from east to west, you'll make the leap from Date to Cherry as you cross the freeway. Yes, it is.
Would you like to see that tied into something? Anything that you'd like to see there or that you envision? Bring a lot of people into town. Well, it sounds like if people don't have to stack up on the parkway, on the freeway, getting off at Rancho California, that a lot more people may be tempted to come to town. Yes.
Is it possible to create the river walk on Temecula Creek,
Oh,
just
interesting.
like the one in Texas?
Yeah, like the one in San Antonio, like the river walk there.
That should create a lot of business.
And that could actually tie into your art galleries there, where you have the river walk, the restaurants, the business. because it is a beautiful creek. And you look out here, I'm so glad that it got dark early tonight because I was looking out past the screens and thinking, gee, that's a distracting view out there. Anything on this side of the room? Any ideas, visions, thoughts that you have? So we were talking about supporting business and economic development, and we talked about bringing arts, galleries, more tourism, maybe a sports and convention center, and really tying into the overall beauty of the area. Are there other things you can think of that would support economic development in this corridor? Bring those jobs in, yes.
Well, I'm tying up the traffic so people can actually get to where businesses would be excellent. So I think that that would be the main focus right away. That would be honestly, that would bring a lot of business our way.
Right, because improving that traffic flow, because one thing that Katie was saying, I mean, it is almost like being on an island where you have to reserve your space on the freeway off-ramp or on-ramp so that you can actually get home or get
Or
to
even
business.
Jefferson. I mean, you can't even get down Jefferson most of the time. And, you know, it's specific times of the day. And it's brutal. It
Mhm.
really is. So.
And that affects business during the day as
Yeah,
well.
people don't want to come on this side to deal with that traffic.
Yeah. They'll go elsewhere where they don't have to deal with congestion. So again, things that support economic development, and again, we're looking at not just the short term, but also 20, 30 years in the future. What could you see here supporting? So one thing we heard was that untying that traffic could really help with economic development, because a lot of it's getting people here. Another thing is beautifying the area, or actually taking advantage of some of the natural assets here, the creek, the mountains, the views that we have here. So, yes.
A question for the audience.
Mm-hmm.
The large open space, now, and correct me if I'm wrong, as I understand, it's possible to have some active recreation occur in there in a way that's consistent with its flood detention role. Assuming that's true, we'd be interested to hear about your thoughts about active recreation. I think that sort of triggered by the sports center idea. Stadium is a new concept of that location, but any thoughts people have about what might occur in that as it relates to recreation use?
And in the effort of full disclosure, I want to know that we don't have a shill here. Frank Miller is actually part of the planning team that will be doing some of the actual, once we get into the specific plan preparation, he'll be doing that work. He was instrumental in that Old Town Specific Plan update, which was adopted in 2010. Just for some information, that area is a flood basin. There are plans, long-term plans to do like a sports park in that area, but it does predominantly during certain storm events it will flood out. So the ability to actually build structures in that area, other than sports facilities or sports fields, would be limited.
Although I guess if we're thinking big or dreaming long-term without constraints, we could see a potential floating pavilion of some sort, right?
Is that property owned by the city, or is that?
It's flood control. Riverside County flood control.
Flood control.
Would the city have access to it if we did those things?
Well, we would have to work through, we are actually in discussions with flood control. Again, one of the plans is to put a transit center in that general vicinity, but also do sports ball fields in that area. The Rancho Water ball fields or soccer fields, which were used heavily until they were closed down last year. This might be a potential replacement for that.
Another thing that we've heard about in some other areas is and of course this has plans to be mixed use, and that means bringing some additional housing in. But what are the kinds of housing? What would your vision be for having housing in the area? What kinds of housing do you think would support further development of the area, the look and feel that you'd like to have for the area, things that the types of residences that you'd like to see in the area? What would you say? Yes.
One
Sherry.
possibility would be the townhome
that's something that we've seen in other areas. I think Andy is in an area of San Diego that has a lot of that with the housing above the businesses and you know, some really interesting variety of uses there. Other types of housing are what you might or might not like to see. Bruce, did you have something?
No, I really don't have anything new to say, but you did a great job telling us where we are and where we can go. I think that's commendable for what you've done. I can only say I've lived here 30 years, and what energy's in this building and what you're doing is great. And I think that's a good effort for talent coming together. What to put there? Time will tell. I could not find you.
Well, you got a chance to actually be a planner for a night, though. You know, that's really exciting job. Katie can tell you how much fun it is being a planner.
It is.
Try.
I am a self-proclaimed planning geek. I have to tell you, I go on vacation with my husband and I take pictures of all of the buildings, the streets, the architecture. I drive him crazy, and so really we're hoping that we can bring out that little bit of planning geek in all of you during this visioning process.
Yeah, planners are a little tough to be married to. It's almost like transportation planners, you know, busman's holiday. You go ride around on all the systems and look at the buses and say, oh, that's bus number 4533. That must be going over the Denver overpass. Yeah, planners are good. Land use planners are bad enough. Transportation planners are even worse. Mediterranean contemporary. Okay. So that's the kind of style, the look and feel that you'd like to see. Okay, we have over here.
How about playing up on the old 395 route? Now you have Route 66. How about Route 395 with maybe the old vintage Hollywood with the palm trees and the Spanish, you know, adobe, how they had the units, like there was a dozen units, not necessarily single story, but multi-story, but that kind of a look. So going back to that romance area.
Sort of a rancho style, or Rick could probably tell me what kind of style that is.
Contemporary training, is that the term?
No, this is different.
Spanish. Well, it's actually more Spanish.
Spanish revival.
Yeah, Spanish revival.
Or Adobe.
Adobe, the palm trees.
It was actually one of the questions, I think, was what to do about an Adobe that was somewhere in the area. So other ideas for how this area should look, how it should work, what should be there? Yes.
I think you should possibly explore going vertical. What financial business districts may go vertical in 10, 20, 30 years? Multi-story, 8-story, 10-story. I think it should be looked at so people have a picture and an idea.
So let people see what it might look like because one thing that I guess the workshop after this is going to be, it's on urban design and placemaking. So one thing that I think the team will be able to bring in, the staff, and probably using some of Katie's photos is, if you have some ideas that you'd like to see illustrated, or you'd like to see photos of, or you'd like to see, get an idea of how it might fit in this corridor, this is a good chance to just throw out those ideas for concepts, because those concepts then we can work through those at the next workshop. So are there other ideas that you'd like to see explored in this corridor? Yes.
I moved here in '89 and purchased the building on the Jefferson corridor because it was jumping. And once the mall was built and Stater Brothers left, I think the energy was sucked out of the entire area. And now it seems like every other corner there's massage parlors, smoke shops, liquor stores. It really is not inviting the kind of businesses that we want in the Jefferson corridor. So somewhere we got to limit what's being put in, and you got to create a sense of excitement to get the people away from the excitement that the mall and the theaters brought is what really drove most of the business away from this corridor. So whatever we think of, it's got to inspire the local community that's going to get them back across. And the other thing is, what is the budget for all this that we're talking about? What kind of money does the city have to revitalize this area?
Well, I think that's probably to be determined, but does anybody have an answer of that, and a lot of it is public-private partnership
Yeah,
as well.
what I can tell you is, when a city adopts a specific plan, you actually have to create an infrastructure analysis of, in order, let's say that we decide to allow multi-story buildings, residential uses, at build-out, we basically have to identify an infrastructure that would be needed to support that. And that one of the things that Katie talked about is that as part of the specific plan, we would identify potential funding mechanisms for that. What the city has traditionally done with our redevelopment dollars is to construct infrastructure. And we've, since 1992, when the project area was formulated, we've leveraged about $165 million of public infrastructure that equated to close to $1 billion in private investment. We are hoping, many of you probably have read that the state is trying to do away with redevelopment, and we are fighting a lawsuit right now in the courts to hopefully overturn that legislation. Our goal is that if the redevelopment agency does continue, the plan has another 18 years on it, that the tax increment that would be generated by the project area would be utilized to invest back into the infrastructure within the Jefferson corridor. What we like to do, what we've done as a city and redevelopment agency is we basically created the infrastructure and the environment that allows private development and investment to thrive without them having to put those costs into the project.
And another concept, of course, is to leverage or be ready for grant funds that come from, say, the federal government, state government, because in the public sector, you never know where the next kind of initiative or big idea is going to come from, and being ready to take advantage of those and have an overall vision and have the infrastructure in place really helps. For example, the Parkway there, it was basically state funding, I assume, that came in there and said that we need to do this. And so that state funding came in, and then the high-speed rail also is an initiative. This is not a local initiative, but still the readiness of the local area is important. So we've heard about some of the big ideas, like for the open space, the Riverwalk, active recreation in some of these areas, what we might be able to do. We heard about some housing ideas, townhomes, residential over retail, having a look and feel that might be more Mediterranean, Spanish revival, or an adobe, but on the other hand, compare and contrast with some of the opportunities maybe to look at how higher rise buildings might look, a more modern look might be in the area, and there might be specific areas that might be one way and other areas that might be another area. We talked about the importance of the circulation and how important it is to have people be able to access where we are, and people be able to get around, and bike trails, other things that could encourage people. But finally, we heard about the fact that if we have some of those undesirable uses in the area that Mark was talking about, that can drive away some of that development. But on the other hand, having some of the, maybe an arts district or something like that could attract development, and that's what a specific plan is all about. So with this is kind of some of the elements of the overall vision here. We want to move into, are there any things that are missing in this before we move on to some of the constraints and issues and opportunities there might be?
I wanted to point out one thing, basically back on the question about what kind of financing the city has. The French Valley Parkway Interchange, that is actually locally funded. The city of Temecula, with some input from the city of Murrieta, is funding that project. The Overland extension across the Murrieta Creek, which will create that east-west extension. That project is actually, we're acquiring property right now. That's in the city's capital improvement program. And that I believe, Greg, when is that slated to start construction over?
We're seeking construction funding right now. As soon as we acquire the property, which we're doing over the course of the next couple of years, we should be in a position to construct. The design's complete. We're just seeking funding sources now.
So you could see that under construction within the next 5 years. So there are already city dollars that are being invested in this area, and as part of this visioning process, that will help drive, how we use those dollars most effectively.
So again, how the city sets priorities, is there anything else, a direction in the future the city should be going? Yeah. Planners aren't no
Question,
consultants.
maybe for Patrick, what is the maximum existing height that is permitted for buildings in this area?
Right now, it's 50 feet, which is anywhere from, you can actually build a 4-story building in 50 feet. There are some buildings, a lot of the buildings were constructed prior to incorporation, but generally it's 50 feet. One of the things that we want to look at is, will the area support, and the property owners support higher buildings? As part of the interviews with some of the stakeholders, that was some of the people's vision, was that they saw this as kind of a financial district, similar to, maybe not as large a scale, but similar to what you see along the 405 freeway in Irvine, where you have large corporations as well as mixed-use high-rise development. And so we want to explore those possibilities and see what the limit would be.
A good destination for all those people who are tired using the 15 to commute to San Diego or the 5 up to Irvine. So Mark started us off on talking about some of the constraints or some of the challenges and issues in this area. You talked about some of the undesirable or marginal uses that there might be there, like massage parlors, tattoo joints, empty buildings, vacant buildings, signs of vacancy. We've noticed that along parts of the 395 corridor. What are some of the other challenges that this area has, that the city needs to be aware of? Problems in the area, things that you see that could get in the way of having a vision of the area. Yeah, Ryan.
I think one of the solutions to the traffic is maybe to get people out of their cars and to walk more, ride bicycles around the area. You see it successfully done in some of the ski resorts up in Canada, where they just have central areas to park your car and then just get out and walk.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see something like that.
Mm-hmm. So that's an opportunity where we could have even more bikeway connections, because in some of the corridor going up and down 395, you can see some of the recreational bicyclists, but they're more kind of the long distance bike guys and things like that. But tying into the trail system and tying into the old town and some of the character there, maybe even having some kind of connection for the wine country folk who might, come over and stagger onto a bicycle and take it up and down.
It slows people down. It allows them to really see what's out there, shots around instead of just driving by.
So kind of a recreational enjoyment corridor where people could actually slow down a bit and get out of their cars and enjoy the scenery.
When there was a Stater Brothers in on Jefferson, and then when that closed down, we were getting many calls from the residents. Basically had to go across the freeway doing grocery shopping.
So that could be an opportunity. The challenge is that there's really no place to buy just regular food. There are no supermarkets, no even probably moderate-sized markets here, other than snack shops and things like that. So having the opportunity to have food establishments or supermarkets or other places to buy food that could tie into the area. Yeah.
To that point, I think there's always been a clear distinction between the east side and the west side. West side kind of goes dormant. East side's alive. I think you want to have enough diversification so you bring life 7 days a week to the west side. It's huge. You can incorporate those usages so you bring people locals and visitors into the west side, so it's not just a dead zone.
Yeah, so make the west side more of a all-day, all-night destination, so it's lively, it has maybe entertainment venues?
Well, not so much entertainment, but just activity where you have people that are willing to come over to the west side, not necessarily entertainment, but businesses that, you know, can attract. A lot of times, 5, 6 o'clock at night, the west side is pretty closed. So businesses, including, you know, retail, even office type or financial districts or restaurants, enough to keep people, the balance of the population spread out a little bit and make use of the geographical area.
Yeah, a planner would call it activating the west side, so it's really getting it so that it's more active into the evening. So, and let's see, why don't take two at the table there and then Steve up here.
Along with what that gentleman was saying, I would like to see us maybe take the old, I guess it's Winchester Plaza has so many vacancies and so much visible space. What if we try to put together on the first lot is some kind of like a street fair may be done in that parking area that bring people that are nice, like Palm Springs and a lot of the cities around here have, and there'd be good draw, and it might take an area that's been a little destitute at night and bring more activity in there for the day business after those events are over, and maybe even the night business while those events are happening, and to stimulate more of a retail desire to move into some of those vacant spaces out there. That would be a short-term and a pretty easy fix to do if the city would adapt something like a street fair.
Which area was that again?
Yeah, that Winchester Plaza we're talking about, this closed Stater Brothers has been closed for 20 years that I've been out here, so.
So really create that short term, like create some of that excitement, attractiveness, activity on the west side by
They could even have some kind of an information booth during those events and let the public know that there's going to be some changes made in the future. And like I say, it stimulate the activity now for those of us merchants that are over there that are pretty much done by 9:30, 10 o'clock at night.
So prime people for a more active west side by starting out with, it's almost like staff were talking about, and we'll ask for some volunteers later, Luke, on some demonstration areas or demonstration projects. So
well, we have the farmers market in Old Town, which really creates a lot of activity, but it also puts a burden on a lot of the merchants down there because it closes off of that parking area. Then it goes to the mall on Wednesday. We could probably relocate some of that to an area that needs the circulation and the activity. So that's something the city could look at, very inexpensive to do, I would think.
So in the interim activity, why don't we take Steve up here and then Dale, you can take that.
I think we do a lot of leasing out of my office, and we get a lot of clients that they either love Old Town or they won't touch it. And that's okay, because you're not fighting. And it's the same with customers. They're going to go to Old Town, but they won't go to the mall. They come to town, they want in that Old Town environment. So whatever you're creating here, I think, you don't want to take away business or tenants from those other areas. You want to create another environment. It's almost like a third area that people want to be, either customers or tenants. That would be nice.
So it's really like a third brand. It's like Old Town brand and the freeway brand.
Yep.
Or the East Theater type thing, which maybe can have a brand for your leasing purposes. Another brand or office.
And drive that area.
That night kind of activity would be something new in the city, certainly not. Well, like I said, one of any kind of a nighttime activities in that shopping center that's basically 80% vacant now. I see there's one major construction going on where the old real estate office was. I'm not sure what that's going to be. Maybe the city can help us, but that's virtually nothing happening at night. So you could set up 30 tents out there with different kinds of purveyors, whether there be food vendors or art or flowers, whatever. I think that's an area that summer nights and a lot of the areas that have the weather that we have could go almost all year round on a particular evening, and preferably something during the middle of the week that'll get people off the couch and out into the area that is right now blighted.
So you can test out tonight as in preparation for
Well, as you said, you would want something that we're not currently doing and have to displace it from an area where it's working. That would be something that is very, I would think, relatively easy to do, and it's not going to upset the apple carts in those other two areas where farmers market is. I wouldn't say this would be a farmers market, but it'd be a crafters market or a combination of all those things that you find in other cities that haven't visited this. I don't visit, but Oceanside has some huge nighttime activities with some of those street fairs, and the same with, like say, Palm Springs, just name a couple, but I'm sure we could probably come up with a list of a heck of a lot more.
This isn't what to put in this part of the city, but this is some facts from a friend of mine. How many people have been to New Orleans in their career? I just asked my wife, she's from Texas, she's been in that area for many years. Baton Rouge is 30 miles from New Orleans. The filming business has brought an unbelievable revenue to the city of New Orleans. Now, Katrina didn't do it any good, but it's come back as a result. But this is amazing, 40% tax rebate to production efforts done in that city, and many cities are doing it. I'm only bringing this up for a financial reason. That 40% tax incentive for the film industry has returned to their city 7 times. So if you just do some math out there, what could bring into the city's revenue coffers and allow these expansions to come out of sheer revenue. I don't know if the city's explored anything in the state to do that. LA just got some areas adopted to create the incentive because California's losing that part of the business. But I think it has the synergy of the creative walkway and the waterways, all of what you talk about to draw some revenue off of that incentive. People want the filming industry in their neighborhood. That's another subject. It is a tool.
Yeah. So looking at financial incentives to bring in, actually draw in additional money to leverage the money. Are there issues or opportunities? I know Mark brought up some constraints or some problems that need to be fixed, but as you can see, some of the problems that are identified also lead to opportunities that we have.
Not so much a problem, but a question. For say home improvement and construction, residential construction materials and supplies, you know, one option you have is to go to Home Depot. But in this area, there's probably 20 businesses that have people and products that are very specialized and have very unique ability to solve problems that you can't solve at Home Depot, whether it's flooring or wall coverings or window treatments or other specialty materials. But what's unfortunate is there's no presence of this as an area that you would go and to solve special problems. It's sort of scattered around. And it sort of, in my mind, begs the question of districts, that there may be, and it's a question to you all, what kinds of districts might be possible to think about that aggregate the businesses that are similar in nature, that if they were brought together, would create a synergy that would attract more business and allow them to compete more successfully against the big box. And the sort of similars with the vineyard and equestrian industry. I mean, that's where I go to buy all my irrigation supplies, all my pipe, all my fertilizer, all that kind of stuff. So as a place to go to support agriculture, equestrian, and the vineyard industry, that's where you go. But it doesn't have that in. People don't ever perceive it that way. And I think it's an open question about the idea of districts, and we want you all to think about that going forward. What are the sorts of districts or areas of concentrated businesses that might make sense in the future that would make you more competitive and more successful?
Any thoughts from the businesses out there? Because I know a number of you represent some of the small to medium-sized businesses that actually, we've heard in the economy, those are really the main vital businesses that are out there right now. So what are there things districts that could create a synergy for you? One thought is like the Cedar Oaks Design District in, is it Carlsbad or Solana Beach, or an arts district that you were like talking about?
What this one gentleman was talking about, you know, the markets and festivals, maybe something, because I know what he's talking about, and I do the same thing. There's several businesses on our end of town where you go for your pipe, you go for, you know, your fertilizers and all the different things. But the general public has no clue that they're there because they are used to going to the box stores. Well, maybe you do a whole festival, whatever, with that in mind, and start building the reputation of that. And they're located here, and you start building the reputation of, you know, an arts mecca place, and have, you know, the different facets, and create a little map of where they're located. But I think it's just lack of education, honestly, from the public. They don't know that L&M fertilizer exists, or Hanks exists.
Or a bikes and recreation district that could be adjacent to the trails. I was hearing over here the need for some things that were for kids or for children. Would you like to talk about that, Joy?
I own a hotel in that zoning that you're referring to in the Jefferson and Winchester area, but we just don't have a lot of things that are friendly for children or for travelers that have children. I know that's always been a challenge for us, and I know that we do well when we used to have the soccer tournaments. And Ken over there says, we need to do things, infrastructure that provides for that particular, age group. And I think we lack it as a city, and we have a lot of young children here now. It's always really busy. A lot of people moving here. That element is kind of ignored, and I think that we need to focus on that. Yeah.
I know that a lot of the housing development that's to the east of the freeway has a lot of young families. And actually, Andy, our graphic recorder up there, worked with Temecula City a couple of years ago on a youth master plan. So maybe tying in some of those things. But what you mentioned is you have a hotel, and that probably families who are coming there to enjoy Old Town, they might enjoy additional activities for children, and that could actually create this as kind of a children's district as well, or there could be a children's district, children's museum, things like that. Bowling alley, I always like bowling alleys myself. So other ideas for districts or clusters of areas that could really help move this area forward.
I had another thought. Whatever happened to the tractor pulls back in the old days in that big open field? How about pig races if you want to get kids and all sorts of things you could do, and you don't mess up the land? It could still be flooded once a year.
And you could connect up with Wildemar on 395 and have the pigs trucked in from up there. Tractor pulls. Can you draw a tractor, Andy? You could? Okay, Andy used to draw a bus, so he says a tractor's not that different, except it has bigger wheels in the back.
That location years back used to have the tractor races that you think about. We even had a few of the balloon events come out of there as well. That parcel hasn't been utilized in the last 10 to 12 years as well as it should have been, or could be used from here on out, especially if it's not going to be built on in the immediate future. So the sports park's probably a good idea, or something where people can have other events out there, probably concert people that have concert events. I think it's great to get people into the area and expose that area to those people in the town before they're hitting all the other bright spots that we have here now.
And the whole thought of having an overall vision for the area, but you can achieve parts of the vision in the short term, because if you have a longer term vision, you can say, hey, short term, I'll attract people. Yeah. And that could be an activity the children that enjoys hotels could enjoy too.
I don't know if it would work with a floodplain, but what about an amphitheater? An outdoor venue for plays or concerts or, whatever the city would like.
Pardon?
That has been discussed in the past.
An amphitheater of some sort? Pachanga? But again, we're thinking big here today, so we don't have to really worry as much about what Pachanga is doing. Just out of curiosity, is there anything that those of you who are in this side of Temecula can think of that would attract some of those folks who are coming into wine country? So it's almost like a reverse attractor. I know Old Town is an attractor here, but are there any other things? Yes, Mark.
Well, the city of Del Mar, they launch balloons on the weekends and they give rides. The city of Del Mar launches balloons, and it's pretty popular with that city to give people rides. You can have tethered balloons in the Jefferson corridor that go up a certain to give rides to people. Also, I think if the rod run might be going away, it'd be kind of neat to have a place where you invite the roadsters and the guys that come to support the restaurants and the car washes and all those things. Get these big guys with the rod have a place to come on the weekends and a place for them to park and have their cars secure and enjoy the hotels and some of the businesses.
And that could actually link into kind of some of the Old Town ideas and also some of the historic 395 corridor ideas. So have some kind of tie-in with autos and roasters and things like that. Yeah.
I just wanted to add one other thing. Maybe as a possible solution for vacant lots or something that could go in the flood control area is a community garden that could support local schools and maybe local restaurants. And it seems like it would be a very economical way of using some land that's currently just sitting there.
Mm-hmm. And actually it could tie into that agricultural support district idea where you have the smaller scale, the medium scale, and the larger scale ag support or equestrian support.
I think if you would build something like the Riverwalk, that would create a lot of businesses. If you have some kind of a businesses facing the river. I don't know if you've ever been into Texas, San Antonio. That's where they have it. And they have a lot of colorful plants. They have a ferry where people can take and don't walk so much. A lot of people cannot do that. And that kind of a ferry converts into restaurants in certain places. Night life, entertainment.
Yeah, so you could link a kind of Riverwalk idea with live entertainment, maybe your amphitheater that you have, things like that.
You can have like the liquor stores. In there you can have shops, you can have the restaurants, you can have a lot of things. There's a lot of colorful. You can have mariachis in Mexico places or different kind of music. For the business.
Yeah. Okay, great. Anything else anybody's thought of in terms of, because again, next time we're going to come back and start looking at some of these things and how they can actually be placemaking. Neil?
You might want to think in terms, what will be the fundamental driver for the whole west side and create a geographical area for that. When you have the mall on the east side, you have wine country, as somebody was talking about, but what do you have on the west side other than Old Town now with the city hall and this specific plan? What can you create that will drive employers or big business that will bring people in and that will be consumers, that will support retail, support restaurants, support all the things, instead of just this, a scattered mix is great, but can you create that attraction that will really be like foundational to the west side?
So have something that's really an identity where people who have certain kinds of businesses say that's where I want to locate. And so how to be an attractor to some kind of big company that could really establish a foothold here. Related ones, yeah.
A comment again. The high technology companies that start up often need very inexpensive, simple space, and they tend to like to aggregate together. And one idea we could poke at is to learn more about what kind of incentives could we create for new technology companies to begin to locate in this area. What are their needs? What are the problems of adding them? I think the idea that you have the existing uses, which are terrific, and we're not looking to subtract anything from what you have, we need to add additional capabilities. There may be businesses that, in fact, are not represented in the district that could potentially have homes in the future.
So it's looking at the start small and like tech companies or something like that that could actually build into like a Microsoft in Seattle, for example.
The one concern I have is we don't have a corporate center area here in Temecula. Take a drive from Corona down to 15, and how many corporate centers are there? I have a little experience in Sereno Valley, and it's kind of like the same thing in Temecula. One, about 15 is all the residences, and then as you head toward the 5, these buildings start popping about everywhere. And my one concern is if we don't have a corporate center here in Temecula, which is where most corporate businesses would want to relocate to, they're going to go elsewhere in the valley. And that leads into Marietta, Wildomar, and if the city and the residents are willing to let that go out there, then let it be. But I think a lot of citizens and the residents here in Temecula have always been asking for jobs. And I think if on a redevelopment project of this size, if you could keep the residents of the city appeased, and that would bring that economic force to the west side. And you could do anything you want with mixed use with that economic force that's there. And quite honestly, employees spend money at Ron's restaurants, they come to our hotels, they go everywhere else in the city and spend money, good money.
So it's the idea of where could we create kind of a grand corporate center?
Yeah, we need to have, we need high rise, we need 20-story buildings. We need to establish ourselves as, hey, yeah, big, large companies can relocate here. Right now, they look at us and they kind of laugh at us because our largest building is 4 stories, although it's a very big building.
Well, you're like Hawaii, where it's Hawaii that no building's supposed to be taller than a palm tree. So you plant a few palm trees here. Yeah, one more, and then we want to talk a little bit about the street itself.
Well, I think the gentleman brings up a good point, because if you're a building owner and you're getting income on a building, you're going to ask them to give that income up. Like Old Town, I can go 4 stories, no parking. That really pushed Old Town to another level. And if I want to give up income on a building, I need to have an incentive to do that. I'm not going to get rid of tenants, build another single or 2-story building. It's not going to make sense. So it's just going to sit there. So you can go 15, 20 stories, then I'll be out of the picture, bring another developer in, and he'll put that whole process together. That would be worth my while as a building owner to get rid of that property.
So you'd be basically recycling your property there. So as we look at this, the boulevard itself, Jefferson Boulevard, are there opportunities there to really create that as kind of a grand street or a grand boulevard? Things that would really spark that area kind of as a district or as a pedestrian area? Or auto area or anything else?
Yeah, she mentioned the more supporting uses for visitors, for the hotels along that area. Whether it's locals or more family-friendly uses to support hotels that are there. I think that's the kind of discussion we want to spur. What else could be on Jefferson Avenue? It's kind of a great street. It's kind of the main street of your community. So.
Any thoughts on that? Because we are going to get into streets at a future workshop, so I'd like to get any ideas that you'd have for that. Oh, we'll come in with some ideas, right, Rick? Rick?
Well, we heard a few comments about making it more pedestrian bike friendly, and today the street is really built around the automobile, but if we're envisioning a future with mixed use and residential and trails, there's going to be a need to accommodate people on foot and on bicycles. So I'm just curious how you feel about making some adjustments to the street corridor to make it more pedestrian friendly and to encourage more walking, better biking.
Any thoughts on that? No, back there. Oh, how about up here? We haven't heard from Scott yet.
It's a great idea that you're doing to tie that into the recreational facility that you would build on that open area. I think as far as right now, what that area needs is traffic and pedestrians and just people over there basically after 5 o'clock on the weekends. And that sports facility there would bring a lot of people there during the weekends. So I think for right now, what you could look at to really help those businesses would be to put something in that area right there. Like, not sure what's holding you guys back from developing that sports park there, but that would really help out all those businesses on that corner right there, especially immediately across Jefferson and that whole area.
To address what Rick said, if you go to Europe, you'll notice they have a lot of roundabouts. You go to Canada, it's the same thing. La Jolla just put some in. I think that if you're trying to slow down traffic on Jefferson and put more pedestrian and bicycle traffic, anything that's going to slow down the traffic like they did in La Jolla, like they do in Europe, with roundabouts or actually what they're called as turnabouts, might help.
That area is probably, in my estimation, 70% curb and gutter with sidewalks. So it isn't going to take a lot to make it pedestrian friendly from that aspect. Slowing down the traffic is another area that might prove beneficial by putting more stoplights more often. We don't, from Rancho, California to Overland, it's like fast can you go, and from Overland to Margarita, same way, and then once you get past it, Overland to Winchester, about the same way. Once you get past Winchester, same way until we get to Cherry, and there's not a stoplight, I think, until you get the date. So maybe we're breaking it down like we've recently done in Old Town, putting a few more signals on the corners where you have to stop. It'll deter those people that are in a hurry that are going to jet down. I know if you come down Jefferson Street 3 to 5 at night, it's bumper bound traffic. It's almost impossible to get into any of the businesses down there because there's no break in the traffic. And I'm sympathetic with those local residents that are anxious to get home, because I'm one of those guys who gets caught in that traffic on the freeway as well. But I think that just finish up the curb. Wherever there's development, the curbs and walks have been built. Where there's not, that's where it stops. You can separate between Rancho California Road up to where the hotels are. There's curbs and walks, and with the vacant space, there's not. So maybe those property owners could be invited to bring your property up to code without building on it. I don't know how you can enforce that situation.
And that could be another potential demonstration idea, would be what are great ideas that you could try or implement. And I know Rick has worked a lot with streetscapes, and there are all kinds of ideas that I think will be discussed in future workshops with this group about, how do you make that more pedestrian friendly? How do you make it so that people have access to it, so you don't want to discourage people from actually shopping there and things like that. But on the other hand, there are ways to do it all at once. So those are ideas. So we've gotten a lot of, I think, really great visions, a lot of fodder to work with, right? Katie's been taking notes here as well, so we've got a lot of information, but, you know, some of the key things that were talked about were to try to do this active recreation area and tie in some of the bicycle and pedestrian uses and really use it as a way to, you know, have things to bring people in, have family-friendly uses that can support the hotels, to look at ways of bringing people to the west, having things that are really activity areas, activating the area so that it's not just a 9 to 5 type of area, but so that people feel like they're coming in the evening. Having potentially districts like arts districts so that you have people coming in for art. Having potentially an agricultural district where it's the agricultural implements and things, but also potentially community gardens that support it. Having some, like in line with the thought about having mixed-use development, having ground floor commercial with residences above, but also with businesses looking at both ways to support and cluster existing or smaller scale businesses, but also looking at the potential for having some of the high rises or a true business district, like some other major areas have. Some of the look and feel might be residential.
Yeah, I think I'd be interested to get feedback on the concept of introducing residential into the area. You know, what are people's thoughts? It has no residential right now, but we've done it in Old Town and it's been successful. What are some of the thoughts that people have?
I think if you look east, there's a bunch of houses over there, and we need to focus on corporate and bring business to Temecula because more housing is not going to introduce large money into the coffers of the city, sorry to say. Talk to them, they're over there. Automobile sales, business brings in more money. And unfortunately, we're gonna have to put in some type of residential to get the redevelopment dollars to work, is what it's sounding like. So whatever you gotta do to mix it in, I keep it as minimal as possible. Because there's plenty of places for people to live in Temecula.
Yeah, I work in real estate, and you know, just because you build houses doesn't mean people are going to buy them. If they do buy them, they're not going to pay top dollar. You're not going to make your money back. In Little Italy in San Diego, we did this a lot, where we built first floor commercial with the residential above it. You can't lease those commercial spaces to save your life. It really concerns me if you want to talk about residential, because it's not going to bring the people that you want it to bring. You need to figure something out that's not already in Temecula, that'll bring people who want to come here to spend their money and to live, not just, exactly.
We have it here too.
I think to ease the traffic, they need to open up another avenue on the other side of the river, which is the connection from Diaz all the way to Washington and Marietta, so that will be a better way for people to come from the 15th freeway. And don't make it so crowded to make it.
So would you support them keeping the housing on the east side, or is that another idea just to create?
Because there is a portion of the land that is not connected yet, so they would need to make the avenue all the way to the Marietta end.
Any thoughts on this side about Patrick's point about housing? Any thoughts about the viability or the need, interest in housing? Okay, here, I'll take this one.
I think you're going to have to have a mix, high density housing and higher density, as Steve said, all these uses on that side. Generate the daytime business with restaurants and nighttime business with restaurants. Otherwise, I don't think it's ever survive.
So you'd support having a mix of uses, but having even more activity on the business side. So.
Both for the daytime use and nighttime use. That's what happens today. It closes up 5 o'clock.
So that sounds like a common theme here, is that nobody wants this area to close up at 5 o'clock and have everybody go home. So that could be kind of a driving principle for everything. Yeah, keep it open.
Well, yeah, I think what Larry was saying, I also concur with, that there needs to be a certain level of residential introduced to that area. As a gentleman earlier indicated, you need a spark, you need something to generate the synergy that's needed, as you've seen in Old Town, and we could go on a litany of other developments where the residential ends up driving the market 24/7, where you don't get that currently on the west side at this point. I would think a private and public project similar to a convention center or some type use like that would be a good generator or a spark for the area to then rally around and use that, which would then draw in the corporate uses that the other gentleman was looking for.
I think clearly you need a residential component. Maybe we don't know what that looks like yet, but we have to leave room for discussion. It will support the corporate business park, the businesses in town. We need that big anchor corporate center of different components that bring in, just in the Bay Area, you have a lot of that, and they bring in big employees, and around it comes restaurants and retail, and then in residential infill and different types of components of different age groups and different needs. I think it will come naturally if you set the stage for it.
So it sounds like maybe a new model, or a model that has, not just building on models of the past, but having a new model, or at least a bigger model of some sort. Because one of the things that we heard is that, even though there's business park here, it's pretty low intensity. It's not the kind of business center that people are looking for. That people are looking for the bigger employment rather than the kind of quiet 9-to-5 business park type of thing. So something that clusters this. Okay, great. So if there isn't anything else, maybe we can talk about next steps. Patrick, did you get what you need out of this? And we wanted to talk a little bit about outreach before we close out too, but I just want to make sure that since the planners are going to come back and Katie's going to take her notes and we're going to summarize, by the way, we'll be summarizing all of this in conjunction with staff, and also this will be photo reduced and put on the website and available, and we shrink it down into an 11 by 17. I put it in the washer and it shrinks. So in terms of outreach, we'll have, as I mentioned, we'll have a website. The city certainly has regular city communications that are used, but are there other ways that you can think of that you or your colleagues or your neighbors would like to be involved? Other ideas that you'd like to propose for engaging people in this process? Because as Patrick and Katie said, this needs to be a really transparent process. It needs to be a process that we've got a great turnout tonight, but we'd love to have 20 times more people engaged in the process in one way or another. And we know that people work long hours these days. Sometimes people work 2 jobs, and so that's why the web tools is one way to engage people without people having to come out to a meeting. But are there other ways or other people you'd like to engage? Yeah.
I just have a question. How did you guys advertise this? How did you notify the public?
We sent out a number of mailings, kind of a flyer that was mailed to all the property owners as well as all the business owners within the study area. We took our business license list and kind of generated the list from there. We also did a press release. I know that there were a number of newspaper articles published, but in addition to those methods of getting in touch with people, we're looking for other suggestions. Email. We're going to have our website where people can sign up. But anything else that you can think of would be really helpful.
You're logged into the city, every email I receive that from the city that way too, so that it really wants to be active, just send it to the city, so their email program as well.
So we could make it really a prominent feature of the city newsletter then? That
Yes.
would be
Also, just to mention, in addition to the website, we are going to have a Facebook page. I know a lot of people are kind of connected on the web that way. So the Jefferson Avenue study area, if you like that page, you'll get updates as we kind of move through the process, which is usually quick, right on your phone.
And since a number of you are connected with the business community, other than the Chamber of Commerce, are there regular ways to communicate with the business community in Temecula?
Any business associations, anything like that that we should be reaching out to?
Yes.
California Rancho Property Owners Association over there. All the businesses are from down. I don't think he sent out anything to any of that.
I don't think we did either. If you could touch base with me after, that would be helpful.
Okay, great. Other ideas? What, Martin? Radio. Media, the radio. Okay, good. And the newspaper.
One thing that we will be doing is using the Channel 3, which is part of the cable system, where we'll be notifying or having ads about upcoming workshops. Again, also on the website, there'll be ways that you can communicate with us through email. There's a core team of city staff that are working on the project, and we'll make sure that that's available on the website, and you'll have our direct number so you can call us if you have any questions or ideas. Again, we want to get as much feedback as we possibly can because we think that that will end up with a better product at the end.
Yeah, he said he stole your thunder about televising it. Actually, how many of you tune into Channel 3 or pay there? Look at the cities. He was like, oh. I know I've always looked at my city's site. But that could be another way, would be to create virtual workshops on the television and have them available to people. Okay, great. So the next steps are that we're going to gather this group and any of your friends and neighbors together probably after New Year's. And the topic is going to be urban design and placemaking, so we'll be able to explore a lot of these ideas that came up today about the look and feel of the area, the concepts of how design is used and things like that. And also I was asked to elicit initial interest in volunteers. I think Luke and Katie are interested in having people who would volunteer to be case studies or, and I think that's still to be determined exactly what the case study is, but it sounds like it'd be fun.
Yes,
So,
we are looking for property owners, anybody who wants to get involved in doing a case study where we would kind of look at your piece of property and look at how it could potentially redevelop in the future, kind of utilizing some of these ideas that we've come up with tonight. What is that going to look like? And so we'd explore that through a case study. We'll be working closely with Frank from Inland Planning and Design, and we would come up with an idea for that. So anybody who is interested in doing that, we are definitely interested in hearing from you.
An example of that, we did that in the Old Town Plan where we actually took existing sites, and Frank is an architect. He was able to draw a concept of what could be done to either, in Old Town there was a case of utilizing existing shopping centers, but designing them where they could make additions that would be consistent with what the design standards were that we were looking for the Old Town Plan. Same thing, same concept in Jefferson, because I think one of the things that we found to be very effective, if people can visualize real places and things, it allows them to have a better understanding of what they like and what they don't like.
It's kind of like we could have plan crashers like that show that's on HGTV, is it Yard Crashers, where the guy goes to Home Depot and nabs some homeowner and redoes their yard. So we have plan crashers where the planners and the architects come in and they'll redo your property for free. Do your plan. So with that, we'd like to thank everybody, and I'm going to turn it over to Patrick to close out unless there are any other comments. So.
Yeah, again, I appreciate everybody. I'm sorry.
One more service announcement courtesy of our project manager, my manager here, prompter. Be sure to fill out your comment cards because we are interested in not just this, not just the discussion, but also many of you may have ideas that either you didn't want to express tonight or things that you might have thought of during the conversation. And so we'd like to have those, and there's Andy has the box right there, the fancy drop box for the comment card. So Patrick?
No, the only thing I have to add is, again, I want to thank everybody for coming out. We're really pleased with the turnout. Again, this is going to be an open and transparent process. We're talking about 5 workshops, but those will lead to multiple meetings later on down the line as we develop the actual plan. The feedback, we learn a lot from the community, and it helps us develop a plan that is really going to be something that can be implemented. So again, this process, we're going to be having a website that will be going live fairly soon. There are our contacts on the city's existing website with Katie, myself, Luke, and Dale. And if you have questions that you remember when you got home that you need to ask that question, feel free to give us a call. We're going to sit down and discuss different ideas and answer your questions.
And I know staff, and we'll be hanging around for several minutes afterwards, so if you want to come up to anybody and discuss, we're open. Thank you. Thanks again.